Metabolism expert Dr. Bickman has emphasized a striking truth about how fat cells behave in the human body. According to him, fat cells do not expand simply because we consume too many calories. Instead, the actual trigger for fat cell growth is the rise of insulin in the bloodstream, which acts like a powerful signal telling the fat cells to store more energy. This statement challenges the conventional wisdom that obesity is primarily about energy balance and calorie counting. To demonstrate this, Dr. Bickman conducts laboratory experiments where fat cells are grown in petri dishes. At Brigham Young University, his students often grow fat cells in carefully controlled incubators filled with nutrient-rich culture fluid. This liquid contains all the calories and energy that fat cells could ever need, essentially an environment overflowing with potential food sources. Yet despite the abundance of calories, the fat cells remain small and unimpressive until one crucial factor is introduced. The moment insulin is added into this controlled environment, the fat cells begin to swell. Within 6 hours, lipid droplets appear inside the cells, and after another 6 hours, the droplets grow even larger. This illustrates that calories alone are not sufficient to trigger fat storage. Insulin is the true catalyst. Clinical evidence supports this as well, showing that elevated insulin levels directly influence fat accumulation and weight gain. From this evidence, it becomes clear that the fundamental cause of obesity is hormonal, not merely behavioral. People who try to lose weight by counting calories or exercising intensely may find that their progress is slow or frustrating. Instead, the more effective approach lies in adopting metabolic strategies that lower insulin levels. Real progress in fat loss begins not with calorie math, but with hormonal balance. There is also compelling human evidence showing that weight gain cannot occur without insulin being elevated. Among young people with type 1 diabetes, there is a tragic eating disorder known as diabulimia. In this condition, individuals deliberately reduce or skip insulin doses in order to remain thin. They have discovered that insulin is the gatekeeper of fat storage, and without it, fat cells cannot expand. These individuals may eat large amounts of food, but as long as they underdose their insulin, even at slightly reduced levels, they remain strikingly lean. However, the consequences are severe because the body enters a metabolic crisis. These patients risk dangerous hypoglycemia, ketoacidosis, and eventual death, all in pursuit of staying thin. Their suffering serves as undeniable proof that obesity is driven by insulin, not simply caloric intake. Many health experts consider fasting one of the most powerful tools for regulating insulin. Fasting naturally lowers insulin, improves insulin sensitivity, and helps the body regain balance. Yet Dr. Bickman cautions that fasting is highly personal and not always practical for everyone. It requires preparation, patience, and a strong degree of discipline that may not fit into modern lifestyles. As an alternative, Dr. Bickman proposes a simpler and more accessible method he calls the insulin trick. This method focuses on using specific eating habits to outsmart your body's hormonal cycles. For example, most people do not realize that insulin is already high right after waking up in the morning. This rise in insulin is connected to a natural phenomenon called the dawn effect, which occurs in every human being. In the early morning hours, usually around 4 a.m., cortisol levels begin to rise significantly. This rise is natural and necessary, as it helps the body prepare to wake up by fueling metabolic demands. Cortisol signals the liver to break down stored glycogen and release glucose into the bloodstream, providing a burst of energy. However, this process also creates a state of temporary insulin resistance in the morning. As a result, eating immediately after waking can be counterproductive. The body is less able to handle glucose efficiently, which means that food consumed in the first 2 hours of the morning is more likely to be stored as fat. Even individuals who practice intermittent fasting by skipping dinner often find limited results because they still eat too soon after waking. The hormonal surge of cortisol and insulin makes early morning eating the riskiest time for fat gain. The solution, according to Dr. Bickman, is to delay eating and allow your body to naturally burn energy. Instead of rushing to the kitchen, take advantage of the burst of alertness that comes with waking up. Spend 20 to 30 minutes planning your day, engaging in light physical activity, or doing some focused work. Your brain and body are at their sharpest in these early hours, making it the perfect time to use this natural energy. When you finally do eat, Dr. Bickman recommends approaching breakfast with mindfulness. Avoid sugary, carbohydrate-heavy meals that will spike insulin. Instead, treat breakfast as a slow and intentional ritual, paying attention to the smells, textures, and process of preparing your food. This approach helps the body ease into digestion and sets the metabolic tone for the rest of the day. In fact, one of the simplest yet most powerful strategies you can adopt is to change your breakfast routine starting tomorrow. Overnight fasting already lowers insulin levels, so the last thing you want to do in the morning is to immediately spike it again with starchy, sugary foods. Unfortunately, in much of the world today, breakfast has essentially turned into dessert, filled with sugar and refined starches. A mindful change in breakfast habits can dramatically reshape metabolic health over time. Dr. Bickman also stresses the role of sleep and stress in regulating hormones. Cortisol is tightly linked to circadian rhythms, and lack of sleep is interpreted by the body as a form of stress. When this happens, morning cortisol levels can be 2 or 3 times higher than normal. This surge pushes insulin even higher, making weight management and appetite control much more difficult. The brain is directly influenced by cortisol as well. Cortisol increases appetite and enhances cravings, particularly for carbohydrate-rich foods. It crosses the blood-brain barrier and binds to receptors in the hypothalamus and amygdala, brain regions that regulate hunger and reward. As a result, cortisol boosts appetite signals while reducing the body's ability to feel satisfied. In the hypothalamus, cortisol upregulates proteins such as neuropeptide Y, NPY, and agouti-related protein, AGRP, both of which strongly stimulate hunger. At the same time, cortisol inhibits leptin signaling, reducing the sensation of fullness after meals. Meanwhile, in the amygdala, cortisol increases dopamine release, intensifying cravings for highly palatable, energy-dense foods. These combined effects make it very difficult to resist snacks or processed carbs when cortisol is high. Breakfast habits also play a role in insulin management beyond carbohydrates alone. Even coffee, which many people consider harmless or even beneficial, can pose a problem when consumed at the wrong time. Dr. Bickman explains that caffeine can elevate insulin levels, especially when paired with carbohydrates. Since cortisol is already high in the morning, drinking coffee first thing can amplify insulin spikes and undermine metabolic health. Supporting this idea, a study published about 2 decades ago revealed that caffeine significantly increases insulin secretion in response to glucose. Normally, when we eat carbohydrates, blood sugar rises and insulin is required to bring it back down. However, when caffeine is present alongside a carbohydrate load, the pancreas must release much more insulin than usual. This means insulin has to work harder, making the body more metabolically stressed. Because of this, Dr. Bickman recommends delaying coffee consumption until later in the morning. By waiting, you allow cortisol and insulin levels to stabilize, preventing early disruption of your metabolism. This small adjustment can help maintain hormonal balance and support long-term weight management. In essence, timing your coffee intake becomes just as important as choosing the right foods. At its core, the insulin trick is about understanding how your hormones behave throughout the day. The morning provides a unique window where insulin and cortisol patterns are highly predictable. Later in the day, these hormonal rhythms become less clear, making it harder to time your meals effectively. Therefore, setting the right tone in the morning is critical for lasting metabolic health. The balance between cortisol and insulin in the morning influences appetite, cravings, and energy use. A well-timed, nutrient-dense breakfast can encourage the body to burn fat rather than store it. By contrast, the wrong choices, like sugary cereals, pastries, or coffee with carbs, can set you up for energy crashes and overeating later in the day. This is why Dr. Bickman stresses that morning habits shape the trajectory of your entire day. It is important to recognize that this approach is not a miracle cure or an overnight transformation. Instead, it is a realistic and sustainable strategy for improving metabolism and supporting weight loss. The insulin trick works as a foundation, helping people create a hormonal environment that makes fat loss easier and more natural. With patience and consistency, this method allows the body to achieve balance without extreme diets or exhausting workouts.